Protecting our forests from wildfire is the primary mission of the Forestry Commission. Properly constructed fire breaks have proven to be the most effective means for containing and suppressing wildfires in South Carolina. Firefighting equipment can range from simple hand tools to heavy mechanized equipment. Every fire is different, so you'll need to choose the best tools for the situation. But the backbone of the South Carolina Forestry Commission's firefighting arsenal is the suppression unit, a crawler tractor with its plow and blade and its transport truck. You are about to view some scenes demonstrating the basic operation of a suppression unit, including how to construct effective fire breaks. You'll also learn how to deal with some common obstacles you'll encounter on the job and how to spot potential problems before they arise. The most common Forestry Commission tractor is a John Deere 450 or equivalent with a pull type or lift plow, an angle tilt blade, and a rear-mounted winch. Some tractors have V-blades and some have front-mounted winches. The most common transport is a dual-axle flatbed truck. There are also a few truck-tractor lowboy combinations. It is important that you be familiar with all the Forestry Commission equipment, since it's possible that you'll need to operate another unit if yours is disabled or you are called to fight fire outside of your area. But it is imperative that you be thoroughly knowledgeable about the unit assigned to you. Refer to the agency's policies and procedures manuals regarding personal use of equipment. See preventive maintenance guides and videos for information about operator maintenance. Although South Carolina's terrain differs drastically from the swampy bogs of the low country, to the sand and clay of the Midlands, to the rocky hills and valleys of the Piedmont, the suppression unit, with minor adaptations, is capable of handling most fire situations. But keep in mind that equipment doesn't fight fire, you do. Your skills and experience as an equipment operator will often make the difference between successful and unsuccessful fire management. A successful firefighting operation begins even before the dispatcher's call. Keep your equipment ready to go at all times, and make a quick pre-response check before you leave for the fire. Make sure that the tractor is secured with all appropriate tie downs. Check for loose objects on the tractor or transport that could fall off during the trip. Check inside the transport cab for loose objects that could cause the driver problems. Make sure the transport tires are properly inflated and have no objects wedged between them that could fly out during the trip. Check for fluid leaks on the tractor and the transport. Make sure all tools and equipment are in place and secure. Ensure that both the transport and tractor have adequate fuel. Before you leave, double check and make sure that there are no people or objects beneath, in front of, or behind the vehicle. A pre-response check should not take more than a minute or two, but it's worth it to make sure you don't experience problems during the trip and your equipment works properly once you get to the fire. Notify dispatch by radio when you're en route to the fire. Even though you're going to a fire, you are still subject to all normal traffic rules. You must obey all posted speed limits, and at no time should you drive too fast for conditions. You must always wear your seatbelt. Once you get to the fire, give some careful thought to the site you select for unloading. Park the transport off the road if you possibly can, on solid ground that is reasonably level and out of danger from the fire. If there is a chance that your transport may not be easily seen due to smoke or darkness, use your road triangle warning kit for greater visibility. The unloading operation will differ somewhat depending on the type of transport you are driving. First, drop the movable stiff knees if your transport has them and secure them by pulling the transport forward a few feet. Then put the transport in the lowest gear and set the parking brake. Leave the keys in the ignition in case the transport must be moved while you are at the fire. Roll up all windows to keep fire sparks from entering the cab. Turn off all lights to avoid finding a dead battery when you return. Release the tractor tie downs on both sides of the transport. Lower the ramps if your transport does not have self-lowering ramps, making sure that the chains will not interfere with the tractor cleats when you are unloading. Be sure that you let the ramps all the way down, otherwise the support may stick up and catch on the tractor when you unload. After starting the tractor, let the engine warm up at 1100 RPMs for a few minutes before putting any load on the engine. While the engine is warming up, turn on the tractor radio, fasten your seatbelt, and notify dispatch that you are unloading on the fire. Look around the transport to make sure the area is free of obstacles and bystanders. Do not let anyone stand beside the transport during the unloading process. Once the tractor engine is sufficiently warm, raise the plow. Place the transmission in the lowest gear and in reverse. Remove the parking brake and begin slowly backing down the ramps. Do not push the clutch in and allow the tractor to freewheel down the ramps. Rather, allow the engine to provide resistance and proceed slowly down the ramps. If you must make steering corrections to guide the tractor and plow down the ramps, do so gently. Making hard corrections can cause the tractor or plow to fall off the transport. Once the tractor is safely down, plow a firebreak around the transport if there is any possibility that the fire could approach before you return. Fire suppression strategies and tactics are thoroughly covered in the South Carolina Forestry Commission's Firefighters Manual and other training. We will limit the discussion here to proper firebreak construction technique as it pertains to the use of the suppression unit. A firebreak is any area that will not support combustion. This can be a road, a plowed field, a body of water, a rock outcropping, a burned strip, or constructed firebreak. Use natural and previously constructed man-made breaks whenever possible. If you must construct a firebreak, choose a construction method appropriate to the site. A very important concept to keep in mind when establishing firebreaks is to minimize the amount of environmental damage while still establishing firebreaks that are free of combustible material and wide enough to stop the spread of the fire. Consider using hand-line construction or water and Class A foam if feasible. Both of these methods minimize soil disturbance and environmental damage. However, if you must use mechanized equipment, remember these important environmental concepts. Plow only as deep and wide as necessary to control the fire. Plow along the contour of slopes and avoid going up and down slopes. Reclaim fire breaks to avoid erosion problems. Never plow directly into a stream or waterway. If you need to tie into the water, use a hand line to tie the plowed line into the water. Always comply with the South Carolina's best management practices for forestry. Refer to the BMP manual for details. A few other points to keep in mind when plowing fire breaks. The fire break should be cleared to mineral soil but no deeper. Plowing too deep puts unnecessary strain on the tractor, slows the line construction rate, and causes unnecessary environmental damage. The fire break should be as straight as possible since breakovers are common at sharp turns. If you must make a turn in the fire break, do so gradually to avoid sharp corners. When planning the path of the fire break, choose the easiest path close to the fire and try to exclude heavy fuel concentrations and snags if possible. If you're using a blade in the firebreak construction, push the unburned debris away from the fire to avoid heavy fuel concentrations right beside your firebreak. If there is any doubt that the pile contains burning fuel, push it well inside the firebreak. If possible, avoid going back along a plowed line in the direction opposite the initial plowing. Bent and broken trees are a real safety hazard. If a line needs 2 trips to get it clean enough, plow a second line alongside the first one back to the point where you need to begin replowing the initial line. Then get over into the initial line and replow it. You should constantly look behind the tractor to check the quality of your fire break. This is important for your safety and for effective control of the fire. Always think safety first. Keep all personnel at least 50 feet behind the tractor. If ground crews must work in front of the tractor, keep them as far in front of the tractor as twice the length of the tallest tree the tractor might push over. Ground personnel should not approach the tractor until they have made contact with the operator, either verbal or eye contact. You will encounter many different obstacles while constructing fire breaks. It is impossible to plan for every situation, but experience and adequate preparation will help. A good operator needs to have the presence of mind to adjust to different situations as they arise. One common obstacle is fencing. Carry a pair of wire cutters with you so you can quickly cut through a fence if there is no other reasonable alternative. If you drive the tractor through the fence without stopping to cut it, you can ruin the fence and damage your tractor. Cut the wire close to the post. It is safer to cut it that way and easier to repair. It is the South Carolina Forestry Commission's policy to repair fences that have been cut as soon as possible. Repair the fence immediately if you know that it contains livestock, and especially if it is near a highway. In addition to your wire cutters, you should carry a piece of wire on your tractor to use for splicing. If you don't have an extra piece of wire, you can sometimes use the bottom strand for a temporary splice. Other common obstacles include gullies and logs. There is a technique to crossing gullies and logs that will enable you to keep the tractor on a reasonably even keel. When approaching a gully, cross at an angle rather than heading straight into the dip. In a narrow bottom gully, you are likely to bottom out and get stuck unless you cross at an angle. Exit the gully at an angle also. Likewise, always cross a log at an angle. If you approach a log head-on, you run the risk of injuring yourself and damaging the tractor. If you must cross a railroad track while plowing on a fire, remember that Forestry Commission tractors do not cross railroad tracks except at regular crossings. Taking a tractor over unprotected tracks could damage them and cause a derailment. You will lose time, but your only alternative is to turn back, load up, and go to a regular crossing. The most commonly encountered obstacles are stumps. You should try to avoid large stumps when you are taking a tractor through the woods, but occasionally even the best operator may hang up on a concealed stump. As soon as you are aware that the tractor is stuck, no matter what the cause, stop and assess the situation. After you determine that the tractor is hung on a stump and you cannot back off the stump, try to winch the tractor off the stump if your tractor has a winch. If your tractor does not have a winch, hook the bog chain issued with your tractor through the tracks on either side of the tractor. Put the tractor in low gear and move the chain either backward or forward to force the tractor off the stump. Be sure to stop the chain before it travels too far and binds against the drawbar or the belly pan. Some very dangerous obstacles you may encounter include power lines, utility poles, and guide wires, underground gas and utility lines, and abandoned wells. If you see any of these things or suddenly come upon a cleared area where you wouldn't expect one, stop, look around, and avoid these areas if possible. If you must cross over underground lines, consider putting in hand-constructed lines or plow a very shallow line. When plowing on a wildfire, you may need to enter areas where there is heavy smoke. Remember that smoke settles into low areas. Your visibility will be greatly reduced, breathing may become difficult, and you will be in greater danger of becoming trapped or hung up. If you find yourself in such a situation, calmly look around and listen for just a moment. Then go to a location where you will be safe from the fire and surrounded by less smoke to plan your next action. The nature of the terrain in the Carolina Lowcountry creates different problems for the tractor than might be encountered in drier areas with less dense vegetation. You run a risk of bogging your tractor if you plow directly into a marshy area. Once the tractor breaks through the surface crust, it will start to sink. If you think your tractor may be bogging down, don't keep spinning the tracks. Get off the tractor and determine what needs to be done. If there is another tractor with you or close by, get it to pull you out with a winch or chain. If no other tractor is available, there are 3 different ways to get your tractor out of a bog, depending on your situation. If there is a nearby tree or some sturdy object, use your winch, if so equipped. When pulling to the rear, you might use a 2-foot chain on the back of the plow through which the winch cable can be passed to keep the plow from jackknifing when you begin to winch the tractor out. Some tractors have a U-bolt welded to the frame of the plow to serve the same purpose. After attaching the winch cable to a secure object, put the tractor in its lowest gear and use the tracks and winch to free the tractor. Once you've pulled the tractor free of the bog, pull the cable off and rewind. This will prevent your ending up with a short cable later if the cable should happen to get jammed on the spool. If there is nothing available nearby to which you can attach the winch, you may have to use the log and bog chain method to get your tractor out of the bog. Find a log 6 to 8 inches in diameter and about 7 or 8 feet long. Wrap the chain around the log several times and hook the chain in the tracks on both sides of the front. Put the tractor in low gear and move it forward. The tracks will pull the log underneath, allowing enough traction to free the tractor. Exercise caution once you see that the log has moved to the rear of the tractor. Make sure it doesn't break the chain or damage the tracks. If your tractor is equipped with a blade but not a winch, you may have to use the blade to get your tractor out of the bog or off of a stump. To do this, extend the blade as far as it will go. Attach the blade to a tree or other secure object with a chain. Place the tractor in low gear and move forward while retracting the blade. It is very important that any time you must attach a chain or cable to your tractor, you attach it to the D-rings welded on the blade or tractor and not to the plow or other parts of the tractor. If your tractor is equipped with a pull-type plow, it may occasionally turn over while plowing fire breaks. If the plow turns over and is lying on its side, you can set it upright by running the winch cable between the metal shaft that holds the wheel spindle and the hydraulic cylinder. Then connect the winch cable to a tree at an angle to the plow and pull the cable in. The plow should return to its upright position. Make sure when you pull the cable in that the cable is pressing against the metal shaft and not the hydraulic cylinder. The mountains and slopes of northwestern South Carolina present obstacles that are different in nature from those you'll find on the coastal plains. Extremely steep slopes, rock cliffs, and heavy hardwood forests with limited access are hazardous for the tractor and the operator. A tractor with a blade is a must. In some cases, the blade will be the only tool suitable for fire line construction. Construct a fire break from top to bottom if the fire conditions allow. Be especially careful when plowing downhill on a fire. If the fire has already run to the top of the slope, you may be able to plow the flanks downhill. But be very careful that you do not get trapped in a gully or valley with fire on both sides of you. Plowing downhill on a fire should be done only by experienced personnel when the fire and terrain are easily visible. When descending steep slopes, slow your engine and pick your route carefully. It is very helpful to use a line locator who can perceive the tractor in rough country. Avoid turning as much as possible when making your descent. Use your blade and keep soil piled in front of you. Make sure you will have a way out once you reach the bottom. Look for large areas of rock hidden beneath thin layers of soil. Tractors will spin and slide easily on this type of footing. If you must cross a large rock, put the tractor in low gear and slowly cross the rock. When it's necessary to work around a slope instead of from top to bottom, use the blade angled and dropped so that the cut will be made in the slope and soil and debris will be pushed downhill. Carry your blade and plow low at all times to minimize rollover. Stay inside or do not try to jump from the tractor if it does start to roll. When climbing steep slopes, again pick your route carefully to avoid rock outcrops and unnecessary turning. Carry your blade and plow low. When a slope is extremely steep, it may be easier to back the tractor up than it would be to take it up traveling forward. On extremely steep slopes, be careful that the engine oil or the transmission oil does not pool out of reach of the oil pump pickup. If this happens, the engine or transmission can be ruined because of lack of oil for lubrication. It is important to stress that if your tractor should hang up or bog on a fire, you should think of your own safety first. You may have to abandon the tractor. If you have time, put a fire break around the tractor with a rake or shovel. Normally, when you're raking a fire break, you'll rake in a direction away from the fire. But when you're raking a break around your tractor, you don't want debris piled up around the tractor. So you should rake in a direction away from the tractor. Place the break about 10 feet away from the tractor all the way around and backfire. If you must abandon your tractor, remove the radio and cut off the fuel if time permits. Every tractor should be equipped with a fire extinguisher. Some also carry a water tank for further protection. Know how to operate the safety system on your tractor. When your tractor has been running hard on a fire, do not shut it down immediately when you return to the transport. Allow it to idle at 1100 RPMs for a few minutes to normalize the engine temperature. While the tractor is idling, you can remove excess debris from the tractor and check out the transport. Make sure the bed is clear, that the brakes are still locked down, and it's in low gear. As you get ready to load the tractor, put it in the lowest gear and take it up at low speed, making gentle steering corrections if necessary. Pull the tractor all the way up to the stops. If you are driving a transport with automatic ramp lifts, the mechanism won't work unless you pull the tractor up to the bar. Once the tractor is at the stops, idle down the engine, shut the engine off, and lower the plow. Always lock the foot brakes. On some tractors, the foot brake is the only thing keeping the tractor from moving on the transport. Turn off the tractor radio. Make sure you tie down both sides, even if you have a short distance to drive. Raise and secure your ramps and stiff knees if applicable. On some transports, you may have to back up several feet to free the stiff knees. Make sure that there is no loose debris on the transport or tractor that will fall off while traveling down the highway. As soon as you return from a fire, notify dispatch and sign off on the radio. Conduct an equipment check to make sure both the transport and tractor will be ready to go the next time you receive a call. Check the following items on the transport and tractor and correct any deficiencies: engine oil, radiator coolant, fuel and hydraulic oil levels, all lights and air cleaners. Check tires for proper inflation, damaged spots, and wedged objects. Look for broken welds and any missing components. Be sure that all radios are turned off. Remove excessive debris. Inventory all equipment. If you cannot correct all the deficiencies you find, notify your supervisor immediately. Most of South Carolina's wildland fires are controlled by a single suppression unit and its operator. How quickly and how effectively the fire is suppressed depends to a large degree on the knowledge and skill of the operator. Accidents, equipment damage, and losses from wildfires can be kept to a minimum when an operator uses the proper equipment operating techniques and keeps equipment adequately maintained.